Hey friends, it's Jessica from Three Rivers Homestead, and I have a fun video for you today. We are going to do some canning projects, of course, because that's what we like to do here. And then we also have some other ways that we're preparing for winter. We're going to do some easy seed saving that you can get started doing this time of year in the garden. And we are also going to show the ways that Adam and the kids are helping me prepare for winter. You see me doing all of this food preservation, but I am not the only one here on the homestead preparing for the winter. Everyone in the family is helping in their own ways. So first, why don't I give you a little bit of a garden update before we start with the week's projects. As you can see, we have lots of beautiful flowers and greens like kale and chard that are growing in the garden. The garden is looking a little worse for the wear this time of year. I've been very busy in the kitchen preserving all of my harvest. There hasn't been time to do a lot of garden maintenance, but hidden amongst all of the weeds and mess, there is a lot of beauty and production happening. So here are my loofah that are just taking off. They're flowering like crazy, and we'll see how many can make it to maturity before the first frost. Loofah is actually a squash, a gourd that grows, and when you dry it out, you get dish sponges. That's what we use it for. Lots of my other winter squashes are really taking off too. We have pumpkins. We have these gorgeous Canada crookneck squash that my friend Sarah from Living Traditions Homestead sent me the seed for, and we're really excited to see how those turn out. Other than that, we're still harvesting lots of peppers. The okra is getting so tall, and that will continue to produce for us well until the first frost that happens in the middle of October. The tomatoes are looking a little sad. They're on their last leg here, but they're still extremely productive and they are just exploding with fruits, so I can't complain there. We also have a lot of celery left. We have our fall carrots, radishes, turnips that are still growing, and then lots of other miscellaneous items kind of filling in the gap. Another succession of zucchini, just lots of things. The beans are pretty much on their way out. But overall, I'm still harvesting these nice little baskets, and we're very grateful for anything we can bring in from the garden at this point. So something exciting happened this year. Adam and I discovered this wild plum tree. It's an American plum tree that it's the first year it's ever given off fruit. I never paid attention to it. This tree in the spring has beautiful flowers, and it flowered at the same time as the dogwood, so I always just assumed it was a type of dogwood tree. And this year we started to notice fruit developing on it. And it's kind of tucked back in our junk woods, and the ragweed and the goldenrod and all of the other wild brush kind of grows up in front of it. So Adam got out his sword because, of course, what man doesn't like an opportunity to get out his sword? He tried the sai and it wasn't cutting it. It wasn't sharp enough, so he had to get out his sharpest sword, and he cut me a path to the tree so that we could kind of look at what was going on there. And so I'm very grateful for his help. We also discovered that there was a young locust tree. We have locust trees all over our property that was kind of growing right next to the plum tree. So Adam had to take that down for me so that that wouldn't choke out the tree and compete for nutrients. And so we're really excited to find this on the property. And I am very allergic to poison ivy. Adam, it doesn't seem to affect him at all. And so I was kind of scared to get in there and pick fruit. So Adam volunteered to help, and he went in there, and I just wanted him to fill one little bowl for me. We left everything that's up high for the birds and all the other wildlife to have as it drops to the ground. And I just wanted enough to do one little batch of canning. And so this is what Adam was able to pick for me. And we're going to get busy in the kitchen turning this into something delicious. As I mentioned, these are wild plums, so they definitely are not as large as, a plum tree that you would plant intentionally. But we're hoping that with a little more maintenance, some fertilization, and some pruning next year, we can increase the size of the fruits a little bit. So since they're pretty tiny, I figured the best thing for me to do is to boil them down and make some juice out of it, and then I can make a little bit of jelly. So all I'm doing is cutting them in half just to make sure none of them are rotten or buggy inside. And I'm cutting out any bad spots that I find on the fruit, and then I'm putting them with the pits and all into my pot. Some people have concerns about boiling down the pits of certain fruit, since the pits and things like apple seeds can contain a form of cyanide. I have done my research on this topic and I feel confident that it isn't going to harm my family, but that is something that everyone would need to research and decide for themselves. So once I got my pot full of all of the plums here, I'm going to add approximately 4.5, 4.25 cups of water. That is, I need 4 cups of juice to make my basic jelly recipe. And we're just going to simmer that fruit and water on the stove. I added the extra water because I knew a little bit would evaporate during this heating process. We're just going to simmer this until that flesh starts to break down and release some of the juice from the fruit. In the meantime, we need to prepare our calcium water. I am using Pomona's pectin for this recipe, and it's activated by a calcium water. I need to take a half a teaspoon of the calcium powder that comes with the pectin and add to it a half a cup of water. You can't skip this step if you're using Pomona's pectin, or else your jelly or jam or whatever you're making will not set. So this is absolutely necessary. We got that stirred up and we're going to kind of set that aside and move on to the next part of the process. I have 1 cup of sugar, and to that I'm going to add 4 teaspoons of Pomona's pectin. Now, the reason I prefer to use Pomona's pectin is because it is a low sugar pectin. Most traditional pectins for this amount of jelly I'm preparing would call for about 5 cups of sugar. But I'm just using 1 cup here, so it saves me money and it's a little bit healthier for us. So just going to get that thoroughly mixed together while that juice is simmering, and then we can go ahead and move on to the next step. So once I feel like enough of the juice has been released from the fruit, I'm going to go ahead and strain the solids out here using a colander, and I'm straining it directly into a big measuring cup because I want to make sure that I have that 4 cups of juice, which it ended up working out pretty perfectly. I cleaned out my pot and then I'm transferring the juice back to it because I need to get this back boiling once I add that calcium water that I prepared. So we need 4 teaspoons of the calcium water. All of the wet ingredients go in first, and then we bring it to a boil. We also need to add 1/4 cup of lemon juice, and then we'll mix that together, get that back on the stove until it starts boiling. And then we immediately take it off the stove, and now we can add the dry ingredients. So that sugar and pectin mixture that we created, we're just going to kind of whisk that in. And then this needs to go back on the stove to boil for 1 minute. When it's all done, you can already see how it's thickening up into a syrupy texture. That is what we want. And then that will solidify as it begins to cool. So I am using half pints for this recipe. And I got 4 half pints in my jars and a little bit left over that I put into a little jar to put in the fridge, and we will eat that at some point this week. I'm sure that the kids' jelly doesn't last very long here. So now that we have our 4 little half pints, I'm just wiping the rims. Remember that jelly is very sticky and it will affect your seal if any of that got on the rim. Then I'm placing my 4 jars canning lids on top. These are my favorite canning lids, and if you would like a discount of 10% off some canning lids, check out the link in the description. So once I get these lids on, these are going to process in the water bath canner for just 10 minutes. And then we have jelly, a low sugar jelly that is made from something we foraged for free on the property. It's very exciting. And while I was canning, I decided it was time to do something with the cherry tomatoes that have been accumulating in my fridge. I grow a lot of tomatoes, and to be honest, really only Adam, David, and I like to eat cherry tomatoes, so they tend to kind of accumulate, and I've been getting about 1 quart container like this basically every other day from the garden. So I decided we're going to make cherry tomato jam on this particular day. So what I'm doing right now is removing all of the stems from my tomatoes, as well as removing any of them that have gotten kind of mushy or were cracked, and I didn't notice that as I was harvesting them. We want to use really clean fruit, and sometimes those cracks can have mold or something in them. So I rinsed them off really well in my colander and dumped them back into the pot that we just made our jelly in. And I added 1 cup of water, and that will simmer on the stove, and any of that sugar and stuff from the wild plum jelly will just kind of release into this and add a little bit of extra to the tomato jam. So we just want those tomatoes to pop, release their juice, kind of cook down a little bit. And then once I'm satisfied with that, I can go ahead and get out my immersion blender and mix it all together. So we are doing skins, seeds, and all with these cherry tomatoes. I think it's going to work great. So adding my 4th cup of lemon juice and also adding those 4 teaspoons of calcium water, just like with the wild plum jelly. So I typically use this same basic jam or jelly recipe using Pomona's pectin as long as I have the same amount of juice going into the recipe. All right, we're going to get that on the stove, but first we need to add our spices. I'm adding some cinnamon, adding a little bit of ginger. We're going to do allspice as well, and then we'll add just a little bit of salt. It is tomato jam, so you can add whatever you want here. This is just how my family prefers to flavor it. We're going to mix all that together, and then just like with the jelly, get that back on the stove and bring it to boiling. I think these cherry tomatoes are going to make a delicious tomato jam because they're a little sweeter than a regular tomato, and I just think Adam's going to love this. So just like with the jelly, we're going to do the same thing. 1 cup of sugar, 4 teaspoons of Pomona's pectin, get that mixed together. And then once our wet ingredients came to a boil, we're going to add the sugar and pectin, get it back on the stove, and let it boil for another minute. Now, Adam has been, he started asking me to make tomato jam for him, I want to say 12 years ago. We were back in our old house. He had tasted it at an elderly friend's house, someone who had been making it since she was younger, and he fell in love with it. And it's one of those things you just can't get at the store. And so I started prioritizing canning this for him every year. And now I have several children who are addicted to it too. They just eat it on their toast or on homemade bread with a meal, and they absolutely love it, just like they love a sweeter fruit jam. So that is who I'm making this for. And we ended up getting 3 pint jars here. We're going to prepare our jars just like we did with the wild plum jelly, and then these will also go into the water bath canner for just 10 minutes. Now, some of you are probably thinking, why do you can so much jam and jelly? Because it seems like I'm always making it. And that is because we cannot have dairy due to an anaphylactic allergy in our house, so we can't butter our bread. So most people don't want to just eat a plain piece of bread, so we will use jam or jelly in place of it. And we can typically go through 5 half pints of jelly in a week or jam in a week. So you guys know I need to make a lot. That's why I'm always canning it. So while food preservation is a really important part of preparing for the winter, something that we can't neglect is seed saving. This is important for growing next year's crop of food. And so I thought I would show you some of the basics of seed saving, some of the easiest ways to save seed, which will save you money next year when you go to purchase your seeds. Flowers are the easiest way to start. You can see this is a zinnia that I just removed some petals from, and the seeds are just attached right at the end of the petals. So starting with your flowers, this is a really easy beginner. If you've never saved seeds before, this is the first thing I would recommend starting with. Just, you can either preserve the whole head of the flower, just throw it in a paper bag and deal with it next year, or just rip out those petals and leave the seeds there attached to the petals, and they'll dry out. And then next year you can plant it with the petal and all, and you have some free zinnia seeds. The same can be true for any other kind of flower. All of the seeds for the different types of flowers are kind of located in different spots. But if you take the dried flower head, this is a Cosmo flower head, and if I just kind of rip it apart and sprinkle it into my hand, you can see the little seeds for it kind of drop in there. And then those can be dried out and planted next year, and I won't need to buy Cosmo seeds. So just like I tally what I'm bringing in and harvesting in terms of food from the garden, I also count this in my yearly tally for how much money I guess I have saved by gardening, because next year I won't need to buy seeds if I'm being diligent in making sure that I harvest the seeds that are available here in my garden. So let's show you some other flowers that are really easy to harvest seeds from. These are nasturtium, and as you can see, they are on their last leg here, but it's really easy to find the seeds on these. They're these big green round seeds. You can actually pickle these and eat them kind of like capers. They're really delicious. or you can pull them off the plant, dry them out, and plant them next year, and you won't have to purchase any nasturtium seed. So we're just making sure to get as many of those that I can find from my various types of nasturtium from around the property. Obviously, one of your easiest seeds to harvest is going to be sunflowers. You just want to make sure that those seeds are black. That's when you know that they're fully mature. If you harvest them when they're white, they will probably not germinate for you next year. One of the next easiest things that I ever started saving seeds from, is probably the next thing I started saving after flowers, was bean seeds. They are very obvious, very easy. You just let the pod dry like this on the plant. It'll become very hard. You can break that pod open, and it's almost like shelling peas if you've ever done that. And inside of there, you will have your fully mature bean seeds that then you can go ahead and plant next year, and you won't have to buy any seed for that. These are some beautiful long bean seeds here. I love them. They're beautiful and black and white in color. So I typically don't have to buy a lot of my long beans. I can just reuse these year after year. You'll see up here on all of my trellises, I always leave a few of them hanging, a few of each type. And then once they dry out, you want to make sure they're completely dry when you go to harvest them, because if they're still a little green and wet, first of all, the seed might not be fully mature, but second of all, then you're going to need to dry it or it would mold in storage and things. But if you pull them off of the plant when they're already dried, it saves you a whole lot of work inside the house in trying to dry them. So we will have enough beans next year with everything I have left hanging on the plant. I do the same thing with my okra and just leave it on the plant until the pod dries and harvest those seeds. Okay, now this is some lettuce that I had sown in the spring. It's Marvel of Four Season lettuce, and I just let it flower and go to seed and then completely dry out. And then at the top of where each flower was, we have a little round kind of hard ball, and if you pop that open, inside of that, that is where the lettuce seeds are. So that is another thing I'm prioritizing saving seed from at this time of year, is any of that lettuce that I had let go to seed in the spring. It is now completely dried and ready to be harvested. So I'm just going to put the whole dried plant here into a grocery sack and bring it into the house. And I will go ahead and show you the next step of how we're going to prepare these for storage when we get inside the house. So definitely don't forget this time of year. It's the time to start thinking about saving seeds. Get out in the garden and don't waste any of that free seed that is growing there on your plants. We're back in the house and it's the next day, and I've decided to tackle getting these seeds in storage. So I typically use a white paper plate or a white paper towel, and I'm showing my son here how you just rip apart the bowl there of the dried flower head, rip it apart, sprinkle those seeds out onto the plate, and it really is that easy. Now, seeds like this are typically already dry when they're that dead and dry outside, but I still like to put them on a paper plate and keep them inside on the plate drying for at least 24 hours just to ensure they're fully dry. Because if you put wet seeds in an envelope for storage, they could potentially mold and go bad. So I just label my plate with whatever variety it is. This is Marvel of Four Seasons lettuce. I label that, and then I can set it aside. If you're worried about the waste of the paper plates or the paper towel, they can be reused. When you're done with this seed type, you can cross it out and put more. We've got some nasturtium there on the plate. Now I'm going to show you how easy it is to do peppers. So with peppers, all you have to do is just open them up, scrape out those seeds that are on the inside, and then just like with everything else, make sure that they dry for at least 24 hours. Just kind of depends on how humid it is inside your house, how long it will take for them to dry. You can do this with peppers. Things like tomatoes, the seeds have to be fermented because they're covered in this gelatinous coating that inhibits the growth of the seed while it's inside of the fruit. And so that is a whole separate process I'm going to show you in another video in the future. I just wanted to show you some really easy seed saving ideas in this video. In case you're new to seed saving, these are some of the easiest things that you can do. So here we go. It's been 24 hours now, and I feel confident that all of these seeds are fully dried. So now I'm going to get out my seed envelopes. I buy these packages of seed envelopes in bulk from Amazon and just fill them with my seeds. I label them with the name of the plant and the year, just so I know next year when I get all of my seeds out of storage, I know to use the oldest ones first. And there you go. Seed saving really can be that simple. And I am not someone who keeps a lot of seeds in my house. I have one little plastic shoebox filled with seeds, and maybe half of them are homegrown seeds that I've saved, and half of them are store-bought. I just keep the things that I like to grow, just make sure that I have backups of things that I really like, and that's it. I feel like this is the ultimate form of self-sufficiency. If you can get to the point where you're saving all of your own seed for items, I mean, to not need to buy them, what a goal. And so every year I'm trying to push these skills, learn how to save even more different types of seeds, learn how to do it without having cross-pollination and things like that happen. There really is an art to it. And I will link a really helpful book for seed saving in this video description in case that's something that you would like to learn more about. All right, so as I mentioned in the beginning of this video, I wanted to quickly touch on the ways that the rest of the family has been helping me prepare for winter. You know, I've been so busy in the kitchen preserving up all the food, but that doesn't mean that everybody else has just been hanging out and relaxing while I've been hard at work. Adam here has been putting the final touches on the root cellar project for now. This is the old coal chute that was eventually going to be the air intake for our cold room. But in the meantime, he just needs to get it sealed up so that no critters can get in there and we're not having excess cold air coming in until we get that cold room built. So that's been a project of his that he spent a couple weekends working on, and once it's completely done, I'm sure I'll take you through and show you how that is going. But besides that, the cellar is pretty much usable at this point, which is really exciting. This time of year, Adam's biggest priority is ensuring that we have enough firewood for the winter. You guys know that we do not have a furnace. We heat our home solely with wood through the winter, and we go through about 5 cords of wood in a typical winter. We always try to have a little extra in storage just because there can be years where it's colder a little longer, or maybe it gets colder earlier in the year and we might burn through a little extra. We actually have 2 wood stoves that we burn. We have the one in the house and we have one in Adam's workshop / garage that serves as an extra living space in the winter. We have a rec room out there. And so we do need to make sure that we can fire up both wood stoves and have enough wood. Obviously, taking down dead trees on our property, chopping all the wood, splitting it, getting it stacked, that takes a lot of time. And so Adam on the weekends, when he's home from work, has been, with the help of the children, tackling this really big job that is honestly just as important to us as making sure we preserve food. We need to be able to keep our house warm, and so I'm very grateful that Adam and the children have been very diligently working on this task for me. So that is how the work breaks down for the two of us this time of year. I am busy in the kitchen getting the food put away. Adam is busy outside getting the wood put away. And together we make a great team, and we're ensuring that our children will be fed and warm and happy all winter long. So hopefully that answers some of your questions about what is Adam doing while I'm in the kitchen all the time. Can't he help you with any of that canning? Well, he is definitely helping in his own ways. But don't think it's all work here. We definitely have time to have fun. We enjoy these times together with the children, working together, making memories, and just playing around on our little slice of land here in Northwest Ohio. Hopefully you enjoyed this little peek into what I was up to here in the last couple days at our homestead. I'll be back again on Sunday with another food preservation video. We're going to be tackling tomatoes. But in the meantime, I'm going to wish that I hope that all of you have a wonderful week full of blessings. We'll be here embarrassing our children by taking tractor rides together. All right, friends. Bye.